Wednesday evening, everybody. You are watching Direct Line Live. My name is Jackie Saxton, and joining me today is my co-host Mark Unkefer, and our special guest, the chapter chair of the Montgomery County chapter of the Moms for Liberty, Rosalind Hanson. Now, before we get started, we'd be remiss if we didn't take a second to recognize that today is 9/11, and to remember all those who lost their lives that day, and to remember that we need to fight to make sure that something like this never happens again on our soil. So with that, we're going to jump right into it. Rosalind, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
So over the past several years, I think this movement kind of started with Glenn Youngkin's race for governor in Virginia, but we've seen this increased emphasis on school board races and parental involvement in their children's education. So what has that been like in Montgomery County?
It's been interesting. How about we'll start with that? So Montgomery County is a progressive county and parental rights are nonpartisan. That said, there is a real strong push from the teachers union to make sure that there isn't a seat at the table for parents to be able to direct the upbringing of their children. And so our chapter in particular, Montgomery County, started in the fall of 2022. Moms for Liberty as a national organization started in January of 2021. Fast forward to where we are now, there are over 300 chapters in 48 states, over 130,000 members. But ours started here in the fall of 2023 under our former chair, Lindsay, one of my dear friends, because there were some curriculum changes coming down the pike and parents only heard about them literally through word of mouth. And so that's really what galvanized, like, wait, what is happening that we're not being made aware of? And parents across, but we're not unique here in Montgomery County, parents across the entire nation, because of COVID, because of the lockdowns in schools, got a front row seat into what was taking place. So while our chapter didn't start until the fall of 2022, I myself and parents across the country, like I said, were like, wait, you're showing my son what in math instead of teaching him math? And then this kind of snowball effect of like, how do I advocate? How do I make sure my voice is heard in what's going on in education?
So what kind of activities do you guys as an organization do to kind of spread the word of what's going on and advocate for your positions?
That's a great question. So we have obviously a Facebook group. Social media is a huge way, and I'm sure you're the same way with the Young Republicans, right? Grassroots movements go like wildfire throughout social media. We also send out our newsletters. We try and have monthly chapter meetings. In Maryland in particular, we have 10 counties out of what we have 23 counties in Maryland, right? Yeah.
23 in Baltimore City, yeah.
Thank you. And so we have 10 county chapters. And what we try and do is also collaborate with those other counties and those other chapters, because yes, our experience here in Montgomery County is one specific one, but we can learn from other local educational districts about, what are they doing? What are their policies? And then really try and bring that together. So it's not just us living in our own little bubble.
Have you guys racked up any big wins? I know that, I'm sure you guys are going out to school board meetings and really making your voices heard.
So especially, again, with the teachers unions that we have as the stronghold here in Montgomery County and with our public schools, I think what we're doing right now is helping parents be aware. One specific win more often, and understanding and showing up and having a name and a face. And what we really try and do here in the county is, it's not my place to tell you how to raise your child, right? It's not my place to say what curriculum your child should or should not have. What we try and do is empower parents to know what to look for, know how to advocate effectively. And then it's really up to each family and each parent, to decide what they want and how they want to engage. But there have been a couple of big wins here in Montgomery County. First and foremost, we have the opt-out lawsuit, if you will. And so some of our chapter members are members of that lawsuit. Some things that have happened after that, some of the books that are a part of that original list of English language arts books have actually been disapproved by the county. Those weren't parents advocating for those, but those were parents bringing to light to the school district, like, are you even aware of what the book says? And then making it's hard at the top, right? You have 160,000 kids in this school district. So it's hard to get into the weeds and say, what are we actually saying? What are the words on the paper? So there have been a couple of books where the district has even agreed, like, we don't need this in here. Like this is pornographic, or we don't need to talk about this level of sexuality in pre-kindergarten. So there are some big ones there. I can keep going, or do you want me to pause?
Totally up to you.
Mark, were you going to hop in or no?
Yeah, I was going to go back to Basic 2020, which was really the genesis of this, was it not? That for Moms for Liberty, where parents saw what their kids' curriculum was around the country, and in particular with MCPS, we have parents who are, how shall I say, very engaged consumers of education and really identified with the school system. And frankly, they were surprised by what they saw.
That's exactly it. And I'll use my own story as an example. Little things like all of a sudden, because we're doing virtual learning, we no longer have time for the Pledge of Allegiance. Like, what? That's pretty fundamental. And, and then when you email the principal and you're like, help me understand, like I can show you this school that is still doing it. I can show you that school that is still doing it within Montgomery County. Why is it that you've decided that we have no bandwidth for the Pledge of Allegiance now that we're virtual? Or, I'll go to the math curriculum. I was out there providing and paying for my son to have math tutoring because he was not getting what he needed in asynchronous learning at virtual school. And then I'm like overwatching and I'm like, he's in math class right now and they're reading a book called Anti-Racist Baby instead of teaching my son math. And this was a district-wide initiative. And so you have to just wonder, and that was my wake-up call of, and I was always an engaged parent. I was a member of the PTA. I was going and doing the bake sales and volunteering, but I never really knew what they were teaching. And it's not all bad. There's some great curriculum out there, right? And so you just have to ask, like, where is that line? Like, what is the narrative we're trying to push? Especially, when we have a 45% proficiency rate for grade level reading as a county, what's the priority here? Because the priority should be that more than 4.5 out of 10 kids are reading on grade level. So what are we doing to focus there?
Right. So
there has been
go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say there has been a lot of discussion recently about whether or not to hold kids back if they don't hit the right level at third grade. And I wanted to get your opinion. I had some discussion on another show, which will remain anonymous. But one of the concerns is that if you hold kids back, but you teach them the same method that didn't work before, as opposed to some of the different other strategies about reading, you really end up repeating the same problem. But this one size fits all approach that MCPS seems to be very much one of their downfalls.
And I think you're right. A one-size-fits-all approach, especially in a county as diverse as Montgomery, isn't conducive. It isn't what's in the child's best interest. And so you bring up about holding children back if they're not proficient at third grade. Again, it's not a one-size-fits-all. From the Moms for Liberty perspective, that should be a decision that's made between the parent, the teacher, maybe the school counselor, but having the parent be the primary decision maker based on what my child was able to perform last year. Like, how did they do with homework? What do I think as the person who is raising this child is in their best interest? And then move forward versus a one size fits all.
So aside from curriculum, I think one of the major things that moms and parents across the country care about, especially in light of last week and as we continue to see it, is school shootings. And I have my own personal perspective on social media having a huge role in something breaking in these children's minds that's leading to this level of violence. But do Moms for Liberty do anything to advocate on best practices for safety for their children while they're at school?
And that's a great question, and especially in light of last week. And I think even Montgomery County right now is thinking about what would it look like to have metal detectors in our middle schools and high schools, right? And so imagine all of our children are going through that every single day. So gun safety and gun violence are a real concern for every parent in America. And so as an organization, what we really try and do is, at the national level, we want to give the guidance and support for our framework and then let the chapters decide how they want to navigate in their local communities. Like, does this fall under parental rights? Yes or no? Does this fall under education curriculum? Yes or no? And then decide accordingly if there is a need for us to get involved or take a stance or raise awareness. So there's no national position. I can say here in Montgomery County, we advocate for the return of SROs. other counties within the state have SROs. We have seen our crimes within schools go up since the removal of them. And so having a dedicated relationship with a school resource officer, having somebody that they can build a relationship with, the kids can know that name, know that face, that is a game changer. So I do hope that we bring that back. It's not going to be for a couple of years that it's voted on or reconsidered, but it's definitely been a hot topic for discussion here in Montgomery County, and we're pro SRO.
It's good to have that raise that issue of challenges that we've had in the county is a number of anti-Semitic incidents at a variety of schools, and certainly having a security presence on campus would seem to be able to make a difference as a deterrent to that kind of behavior.
Absolutely. And again, I'll go back to Montgomery County being as diverse as it is. So we really need to make sure that our children understand that just because we have differences doesn't mean we have disrespect. And that's also on us and onus as parents, right? Like we can't expect our teachers to get them grade level proficient in reading, writing, and arithmetic, and then also teach them morals and values. So these are things that also parents need to take ownership and accountability for. Like, what are you saying at home? What are you demonstrating at home? And then also, how are we helping support our teachers in the schools so that way these things aren't happening anymore? Because it's unacceptable. And, you know, at Moms for Liberty, we just had our summit in DC. And on our Sunday panel, we had Marissa Straight with Prager University, and she led an anti-Semitism in the classroom seminar, which was it was the day after 6 of the hostages had been tragically, killed. And so we really do need to address it and all forms of hate head on. That is just not going to be tolerated.
So one of the issues that has, historically been an issue in public schools is the ratio of teacher to students, right? There's so many students in the classroom, and not every student is getting the attention necessarily that they need to survive and thrive. With Montgomery County being a sanctuary county and so many undocumented families moving into the area, are you seeing that there is more of an uptick in that being an issue in the county?
So there's an uptick in a student to teacher ratio here in Montgomery County because of the budget cuts last year. And so what the school board decided to do and what the county approved was that instead of cutting in other places, we're going to basically increase student teacher ratios. So we're going to have more kids in the classroom instead of finding other ways. And that was really a play to the heartstrings, like, oh, if you don't give us more money, then we're going to have to increase student to teacher ratios. So I don't think it has anything to do with, undocumented workers. In fact, our enrollment versus projections is down 7.1% across the entire county. And that's because parents are fed up. Like, I have many members of Muslim friends, Jewish friends, Ethiopian Christian friends, Catholic friends, even non-denominational friends who are fed up with the fact that, like, the schools aren't safe. The kids are given materials that are below grade level. Like, we're just not teaching our kids. And so they're moving to private schools, they're moving to charter schools, they're moving to homeschooling because our system as it isn't working. But there is hope. Like, we have a brand new superintendent, right? And he has made some really great changes in these first couple of months. You can feel that there's transparency coming. His relationship with our former MCPD chief, who is now in head of security, Chief Marcus Jones. So you can see, hopefully, that there is this glimmer of hope and possible change in the future. And that's encouraging, but that doesn't mean that the work is anywhere close to done.
So sticking on that topic of hope, one of the things that also has a major impact is who serves on the Board of Education. So can you talk a little bit about the Board of Education races we have going on in the county this year?
Absolutely. And I think here in the DMV, we get gobbled up by national media, right? Like, it is consuming us 24/7. But the reality of the situation is that your and mine and Mark's and everybody who's listening or will listen in the future, your day-to-day life is impacted the most by who is on your school board, right? Because people come to your county because whether or not you have good schools, right? There are reasons why Virginia is prospering over Maryland. And it's not just the economic stuff, it's the school stuff too. So we do have a school board race. And unfortunately, these lower down ballot candidates, they don't get the notoriety. It is extremely hard to raise funds at the school board level. And also, like, if you do make it to school board, it's a $25,000 a year stipend. So it's also then really like tailored to who can afford to do it, right? Who can afford to only make $25,000 a year? And so you've really limited the pool of people who can actually vote. But that is the number one focus. If anybody listening, that's the number one focus is who are you voting for school board and why?
Well, before we ask you for your own preferences, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that our executive producer, Dwight Patel, isn't on the show tonight. And the reason for that is he's in Anne Arundel County, where former Governor Bob Ehrlich is involved with a fundraiser for a PAC that is supporting more conservative candidates for the Board of Education, one of which instrumental in that whole process was one of the Anne Arundel County members who's been very effective and outspoken, Corinne Frank. So we're left behind because we had to do the show, right, Jackie? We're really glad to be doing it, but that's where Dwight is tonight. And
sorry, not really sorry.
We look forward for that to be. Yeah, that's supposed to be, that really came out as a diss, and it was really intended as a kind of positive statement of, we really concur with you, the need to be able to have a much more effective effort to support candidates who are good for the Board of Education. So with that long-winded update, do you have recommendations for the MCPS race?
So we, as a chapter, are not endorsing any candidates. And again, the reason is everybody has to make the decision that's in their best interest. So we're not officially endorsing anyone. Who you decide to vote for, hopefully, is educated. Now, I will share with you who I am planning to vote for, and you do with that what you may. And I don't know, you two are experts, so you probably do know. So I'll do a little layman background for those who might watch and not know. But in school board race, right, you have, in this election in particular, you have District 2, District 4, and an at-large seat. And so the candidates themselves for District 2 and District 4 have to live within those districts. But the entire county, the entire population gets to vote for the District 2 candidate, the District 4 candidate, and the at-large. And so that means like the District 2 candidate who covers Poolesville, people in Silver Spring are getting to decide who that District 2 candidate is. So that's why it's really important that every single person gets out and votes, because we need to make sure that the people from Poolesville are represented just as well as the people from Silver Spring. So voting is essential. So with that said, in District 2, you have two candidates. You have Natalie Zimmerman and you have Brenda Diaz. I have not had the opportunity to meet Natalie personally, but I have seen a couple of forums where she has talked. I will be voting myself for Brenda Diaz in District 2. I've looked at her website. I've met with her several times. I believe in her platform. And so I would encourage everyone to go Google her up and see what you support. In District 4, we have Shebra Evans, she's an incumbent, and we have Laura Stewart. I will be voting for incumbent Shebra Evans. And again, I have met with Shebra before. I have seen her in forums. I have gone and testified and watched her board meetings and watched her presentation. I have had not yet the opportunity to meet with Laura. I would love the opportunity to meet with Laura. So if somehow she sees this, and I know she knows how to reach me, Laura, I would love to have coffee. So she's running there. And then in the at-large seat, we have Lynn Harris, who is an incumbent. And then she is running against Rita Montoya. And so in that race, I am actually TBD. And so I would encourage all of your listeners to go look at their websites, look at what Lynn Harris has posted in the past, what she has voted on in the past. I don't want to tell anybody what to do. I want everybody to make an informed decision. So I hope that was the politically correct answer you weren't looking for, but got.
So I was going to say, on the fully partisan perspective, it's better to not tell people who we're voting for, because it doesn't
maybe I could put you on the spot even more. Yeah, but put you even more on the spot. Correct me if I'm wrong, with the little horse race issues where some of the incumbents were opposed by the teachers union. And so we have a kind of an interesting dynamic. Usually they continue to support the incumbent school board members. And this year there seems to have been some
drama,
friction in paradise, some
There
drama.
there needs to be change in our Board of Education. Like the things that have been happening over the last decade aren't working. The thing I can say the most is that the thing that we battle with the most is that our teachers union is extremely powerful, and they have the ALPA ballot. And so a lot of people who don't research the candidates, and then they get this thing in the mail that says, well, teacher recommended. No, it's union recommended. And that's very different than teacher recommended. And so then they blindly use that endorsement to make their decisions instead of researching themselves, because researching is hard, and it's a lot of work to know which candidates you're going to support, right? And so you're right, though, Mark, that there are incumbents, like Lynn Harris is not the candidate sponsored by the union, or endorsed by the union, rather. And Shebra Evans is not the candidate endorsed by the union. They're both incumbents. And, we can't ignore that the last, COVID and even prior haven't been great for MCPS. Like, we are not the shining doll that we once were. And so we need to figure out how to resolve that. And we need to do it very, very quickly, because at the end of the day, it's the kids that are suffering. The kids are the ones who can't read. The kids are the ones that are going to their outside math prep, and they're like, wait, you don't even know how to do algebra 1. Like, the kids are the ones that are being impacted the most by what policies have already been enacted. And I can understand why the union wouldn't endorse incumbents.
So I want to pivot over to another issue that you guys are focusing on this election cycle, and that's the issue of question 1, which is a Maryland statewide ballot question. And you could probably give a much more concise description of what it is. So I'm going to let you go ahead and do that.
So the Ballot 1 initiative is an opportunity for Marylanders to vote on whether or not to enshrine reproductive freedom in our Constitution. And so there are those that believe that reproductive freedom equals abortion, and that this is an abortion right. And it's saying that everyone has a right to an abortion, and we're putting that into our Constitution. Conception to birth abortion is already legal in Maryland. It has been since 1992. I'm pretty sure that's the date. And so the reason that we're kind of pushing back on this and saying vote no on ballot initiative number 1 is because of the language of what it's putting into our Constitution. So for a couple of things, the language is that every individual, right? Well, an individual is a baby or a 90-year-old person, and everywhere in between. So when you think about reproductive freedom and every individual has that right, well, does that mean a child has their right with or without parental consent? At what age? So that's a big red flag to me. Is abortion rights are technically women's rights because only women can get pregnant. So why are we using the word individual? That's number 1. Number 2 is reproductive freedom. Everyone has this right to reproductive freedom. Well, nowhere in Maryland law is the phrase or term reproductive freedom defined. So why are we going to use language that, oh, sorry, I saw that pop up there.
That's okay. Sorry, I'm just playing with the board.
So reproductive freedom isn't defined in Maryland law anywhere. So then we have to be really specific and really precise with our language. Like, imagine if our founding fathers, if abortion had been a topic of the time, had they outlined it in the Constitution then, whether it was constitutional, whether it was not, like if they had been precise with it, we wouldn't be having the issues we're having right now. Right? So specificity matters. So if you can't define reproductive freedom, maybe we shouldn't be using that language in our Constitution, right? Like, we have the opportunity to do it, so do it. And then there's the part where it says including but not limited to, and then it goes on to say abortion. So including but not limited to abortion. Okay, well, what is outside of abortion that you're potentially talking about here? Right? Is it talking about vasectomies? Is it talking about gender affirming care? In which case, in 2023, I believe that already was passed by Governor Westmore, that Medicaid and Medicare will cover gender affirming care. So why are we enshrining it into our Constitution? And again, it goes back to, gender affirming care when you're 18 and older. If you would like to self-sterilize yourself, go, Godspeed. But do we really want to open up Pandora's box to 14-year-olds being able to self-sterilize themselves, right, when they're about to go through puberty, potentially without their parents knowing? I think the answer for me is no. And so what I want to encourage all of your listeners is to say, this bill or this amendment as written is way too vague. Like, what are we actually approving here? So Annapolis, abortion is legal in Maryland. Like it or lump it, it is. And so what we need to do is say to our legislators is do better. Like, open up Webster's, make a definition, go back and define what you're saying more precisely, so that way we can protect future generations from dealing with what we've been dealing with in post-Roe world.
Yeah, and I will say, just anecdotally, to what you were saying about the gender affirming care part, particularly for minors, just people I've talked to have even registered Democrats, they don't agree with that, particularly those who are parents. And it really is just a lack of education on what's really going on in Annapolis. And I think a lot of people are just going to see question 1, Reproductive Freedoms Act, and go, oh yeah, that sounds great, right? But they're not. It's intentionally vague. It's intentionally misleading. And to me, we should be passing a law about making things not intentionally misleading. But that's a conversation for another day.
Marylanders need to be smarter than this. This is just like bad wording. We're better than this.
You do a great job of describing the sort of Trojan horse component of the way the language works.
Well, and I want to be an optimist and hope that it wasn't intentional, right? Let's hope for the best.
I'm too jaded now. I've lived here long enough that I don't believe it.
Jackie, you're too young to be jaded. You're in the young Republicans. Come on.
And back to what I was saying before
I wanted to come back.
Why did I choose this as a hobby? Go ahead, Mark.
I wanted to go back to earlier. You were talking about having your kids do math tutoring, and as a former MCPS parent, I'm reminded of having my kids one kid do reading tutoring, and I had a son who was lagging behind at reading, and took him to God bless them, Sylvan, which does a land office business in Bethesda, doing tutoring and reading. But one of the fascinating things about it was who was the instructor, and they did a great job and brought him up and did a great job. But it was an MCPS teacher who was moonlighting. And the key variable was they were using different strategies that coulda, woulda, might have been, but weren't being used in the schools, but were available for a fee. And in some respects, it really underscores the fact that much of the results that MCPS has gotten over the years is a function of the active involvement of parents. Parents are at the beginning of the year given contracts that they sign with the school, and you sign more contracts than you do when you buy a house, I think. But the expectation is that the parents will be very involved in making sure that the homework is done and everything else. And it really is a reminder of the fact that the results that the school system loves to tout are very much also the function of, it's a good thing, not a bad thing, but are very much the result of very engaged parents like yourself.
Well, and I'll add to that too, is that Carroll County's African American community has the highest proficiency rate in English, language arts, and mathematics. And Carroll County's African American community also has the highest two-parent household, right? So it does come down to parent engagement, parent involvement. And activism, as you both know, is exhausting, right? Like, I don't want to have to be the watchdog of MCPS. And yet here I am because I have lost trust in the system, right? And also, shame on me. I am as guilty as many other parents, where I dropped my son off at 8:30, went and worked, thought he was perfect. And he is. There are so many great, wonderful things about Montgomery County Public Schools. And so I don't want this to be, a bashing session about our public education system. Rather, I want to empower parents that our children are ours, right? And so the outcomes that they have in school, that's our number one responsibility, is to raise productive members of society who care about each other and can sustain themselves and support themselves. And if we're not making sure what they're learning at school is on the exact same course for them to achieve academic excellence, to get the career that they want so that they can contribute to our country, then that's our responsibility. That's on us. Like, we can't blame the public schools for our kids not meeting the expectations that we want them to achieve. We are the primary drivers of what their outcome is.
Although I will say, to what Mark was saying earlier about Sylvan and the teachers being moonlighting there, for a state that prides itself on this, Westmore's slogan is like nobody left behind, and they're so big on this, like, every child should have the equal opportunity. But it sounds like if you want the real quality education, you have to pay for the extra hours and the app. So because we're handcuffing these teachers from being able to use these methods that are working. And I think that that's so interesting, especially, given the money we're throwing into Kerwin and everything like that, that these methods exist, but we're not giving our teachers the freedom to do what they need to do to actually educate their students, because we're weighing them down with all this social nonsense that isn't actually teaching our students how to succeed. And I've said this to a lot of people I've talked to. I graduated high school in 2015. No one when I was in elementary school taught me anything about, pronouns, gay marriage, whatever, relationships. But I turned out, like, I'm very pro gay marriage. I think that people should be able to love who they want to love. I'm a very live and let live kind of human being between consenting adults, whatever. And no one taught me that. It didn't have to get shoved down my throat in elementary school. So it's like, why? What happened? Where was this tipping point?
I think the tipping point was probably before COVID, right? And I think we have taken and prioritized, and I'm going to use air quotes, not to diminish it, but to, catch all it. But we've taken inclusivity and the feelings and everybody's welcome and prioritize that over making sure our kids can read, write, and do arithmetic, right? And what have we added onto our teachers' plate to make sure that they are checking all these boxes about, what are your favorite colors? What are your preferred pronouns? Can I use these preferred pronouns with your parents, right? Like, what an added level of stress for our teachers. And their jobs are hard enough as it is without mixing in, oh, by the way, now I'm going to be responsible for your social and emotional well-being. No, that is a hard stop. That goes back to mom and dad.
Absolutely. Mark, do you have any other closing questions before we wrap up?
No, I don't.
Awesome.
We'll ask Rosalind to bring us up to date with
anything we missed.
Well, first I want to thank you both for having me on, and I'm sorry that you're not with the former governor right now. So I apologize.
He's sick of seeing me. He sees me too much.
And then the last call I'll have is, one, vote. Make sure you're voting accordingly, and you know who you're voting for school board. Two, get involved. Ask questions. It doesn't hurt to, if it's with Moms for Liberty, you can go to momsforliberty.org. You can find our chapter. You can sign up there. And if you don't have enough time, if you don't have an extra 3 hours in the week, like, the people that, if you don't have the extra time, donate. Right? We're a 501c4. So we operate solely on the generosity of people's time and money. And again, that's momsforliberty.org. But I hope that both of you in your campaigning for the rest of the year, hang in there. Don't get too much grayer. We're fighting the good fight.
Awesome. Well, Rosalind, thank you so much for joining us and for imparting your knowledge. And Mark, thank you so much for fighting through
I was going to observe that.
Yeah. Good.
Yes. I was just going to make the observation that a lot of the ways to access Moms for Liberty is through Facebook. And so just underscore that you guys have made really good use of that. And in addition to getting on the website, that's also a great way to figure out how to get involved.
Yes. So if you could look for the Moms for Liberty Montgomery County chapter on Facebook, you can request to become a friend. It might take me or some of the other admins a minute to approve you. But yeah, we do post a lot of our updates there. Thank you for that, Mark.
All right. Well, we will be back next week with another exciting guest. I don't know who it is yet, so I'll be as excited as you all are. Have a great night, everybody.
Bye.